Here's 22 of my most successful members I've ever worked with. Tell me what makes you successful. And I said, I think I know. And we discovered two things. One is they each had two of the same personality traits. They have a passion for hospitality. You've got to love this business because there's challenges every single day. The second is they're persistent. And if COVID didn't teach us anything, it's that persistence that keeps us going and going and going. That's like the key of the most successful people I've worked with. But then we discovered as we're going around what made them successful. And it really came down to number one. And this is where the restaurant prosperity formula was created.
Welcome to another episode of Whisking It All. We're joined today by David Scott Peters, restaurant expert and coach. David, excited to have you on the show.
I'm thrilled to be here. I love the name of the podcast, by the way. It's fantastic.
I appreciate that. No, it's great. I've seen your content for a long time. I love what you're doing. I love anyone who's helping the restaurant industry. So I appreciate it. I know restaurants appreciate it. And when you agreed to be on the show, I was excited because I'm sure we have similar paths when it comes to inventory. But I know you do way more than just inventory. But it got me super intrigued. So, as always, I love to start with the backstory. I'm always curious to understand how people got into this magical space of hospitality. So let's start with your backstory. What got you into the restaurant world?
Long story short, as short as I can make it, I grew up in my family's restaurant and catering business back in Linwood, New Jersey, where I worked for the toughest manager I know. If you ever worked for your mom, it sucks. She worked my sister and I twice as hard as everybody else, said me no favoritism. While I hated it as a kid, she did me a favor, gave me a work ethic like nobody else around. So every job I had, I elevated quickly. Fast forward a bunch of restaurant jobs to eventually out of college, moving to Arizona. I ended up, I was bartending and doing some consulting for franchising. I used to be a franchise salesperson and compliance person right out of college. Okay. And next thing you know, I get sucked back into the business. A company was called Coyote Springs Brewing Company Cafe here in Phoenix, Arizona marketplace. This is in the early 90s when brew pubs were opening one a week. And the first one was magic. It was a cash cow, hand over fist money. I eventually moved into an operations manager role as we opened our second location, which is like owning a boat, a hole in water in which you throw money. And so this is where I learned cash was king, not profitability. It doesn't matter what your profits are if you don't have money to pay your bills. And I also learned to cut my teeth on systems, that there's a system, a process, a way to doing anything and everything in your business. When the owner started taking it down a path that we are on path to bankruptcy, I was like, I've got to go. And so I went and taught at Scottsdale Culinary Institute, management, human resources, wines and spirits. I actually skipped one. I went to a company called Famous Sam's, a 30-unit restaurant sports bar chain. There I was the director of operations, opened 8 stores. We're going gangbusters. They damn near bankrupted the company. So I went and taught at Scottsdale Culinary. Wow. Management, human resources, wines and spirits, not a chef. Don't talk to me about food quality. My knife skills are horrible, but I can run anyone's kitchen with the right systems. I can order on budget and par levels, prep systems. I can schedule based on staffing guide and budget. I can open and close every station off of open and closing side work checklists. I can manage it. I just have no culinary skills. And while I was consulting, the minority shareholders, Famous Sam's, asked me to come back. I said, sure. And actually, it was a lie. It was about no. It was about 1 month before my first child was born. I went, okay. And I walked into a company that's the minority shareholders who bailed the company out were now the majority shareholders, and the company should have been toast. Yet I was given a goal, turn the company around and sell it in 5 years. I missed that goal by 3 months. I know what it is being an independent operator. I know what makes the chain successful. I used to think it was my job in life to give the independent the same systems and tools that chains use without losing your independence. We love our guests, we love our employees, but we are going to do what they do well, that's make money. But as I started down the path of my last company, which was a restaurant training coach company, I started 21 years ago, turned into seminars, workshops, eventually software. And my business partner approached me to buy me out 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago. And I said, okay. So I've been back to my roots of working with independents and not just getting the systems, but understanding we work towards restaurant prosperity. In my world, it's freedom for your restaurant and the financial freedom you deserve. So if we get you freedom, that means we have managers in place, you have systems in place, and you're making money. And
Yeah.
so it's really focusing on the owner, because that's really the person who's got to turn things around.
Well said. I mean, it's really cool. I always like to, start with that kind of backstory because it's interesting to know where people have been to kind of explain where they're at today. And you have a wealth of experience, and we're going to get more into the restaurant prosperity formula. So I'm curious, you kind of touched on it. What was that aha moment that sparked the idea specifically for that restaurant prosperity formula?
So I was literally writing my book, Restaurant Prosperity Formula. It didn't have a title yet. It was a book, and I didn't want it to be a textbook. And in my old
Right.
company and now in my current company, I run a mastermind group. So independent restaurant owners, 20 plus, in fact, the old company is 22 restaurant operators who want to really make a change in their business. So they're at the top of the food chain. They've already made changes. They've got growth mindsets. They want to get together and share and help each other. Well, it was my very last, I didn't know it at the time, my very last elite meeting, my old company. And I said, okay, my book is almost finished. I don't want it to be a textbook. I need to refine it. And I went around the room and said, I'm going to hijack our meeting. Here's 22 of my most successful members I've ever worked with. Tell me what makes you successful. And I said, I think I know. And we discovered two things. One is they each had two of the same personality traits. They have a passion for hospitality. You've got to love this business because there's challenges every single day. The second is they're persistent. And if COVID didn't teach us anything, it's that persistence that keeps us going and going and going. That's like the key of the most successful people I've worked with. But then we discovered as we're going around what made them successful. And it really came down to number one. And this is where the restaurant prosperity formula was created. Restaurant prosperity, again, is freedom for your restaurant and the financial freedom you deserve. Most successful people I've ever worked with. I look at them, listen to them. Very first thing is they're leaders. It doesn't matter that you own a restaurant. It doesn't make you a born leader. It takes leadership to be successful. They were leaders. You have to lead. Then I realized I've been teaching them systems, processes, ways forever. And you've got to have those systems, whether it's counting out a bar door the same way every single time so that it's your way, or it's dollars per labor hour worked, or ideal versus actual product usage, from easy to challenging. Does not matter. There's a system, a process, a way. And by the way, restaurant owners listening to us, it's your way. I run what I call a democratic dictatorship. I want everybody's input, but you are going to make the call. Whether you want to bend your system or not, it's your way. Then the most successful people I've ever worked with, they're learners. Their training is key. They say, I don't know what I don't know. So they're willing to go outside of their four walls, read books, go to seminars, watch YouTube videos, podcasts, go to the NRA show or another food show, like they're information gatherers. And they go, oh, I've got here's the one idea I needed from this seminar, the one idea I needed from this show. And they go home and take action. But more importantly, they have realized it doesn't matter what they know. If they don't teach their managers, who cares? So training goes both ways. Right. Then at the bottom of that, don't care if you have systems, don't care if you have training, if you're not willing to hold people accountable. And that is the Achilles heel for most restaurant owners, is not willing to hold people accountable. And in my world, accountability is ugly. I'm going to hold you accountable, right? That's horrible, Angela. I'm going to hold you accountable. That's what managers hear. But if I train you what your job is, how to do it, how well it should be done, more importantly, by when you demonstrate it back to me, then you know your obligation, your JOB. Then you make a decision, do my job or not, and you're answerable for the resulting consequences. So if chef has been taught how to take inventory and does it for 24 weeks in a row, if week 25, chef wakes up, doesn't take inventory, there's no, why didn't you take inventory? It's going to be like, why didn't you take inventory? You're not going to get, well, you never told me you wanted it 25 weeks in a row. Like, we're so clear, right? So now it's onus is on chef, and chef, well, guess what? You're about to get written up. You know it's coming and it's not going to happen again. But that's where we take accountability, and I change it to the word answerability. Last but not least, my father had a phrase that said, ideas are cheap. It's the people who put them into action that are priceless. So the last piece of the formula is taking action. I don't give a crap if you have systems. I don't care if you go learn all day. I don't care if you think you're going to hold people accountable. If you don't do something, nothing changes.
Right.
And that's
Right.
the hardest part when you look at it. Accountability is usually most people's Achilles heel, but a lot of people like to talk about it, talk about change, talk about
Yeah.
change. You
Yeah.
got to do it.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you see that in general, right? Like I think about when we started Whisk being around startups, it was such a common thing. Like people reading books and attending startup conference and like you'd meet that guy or girl years later and they still didn't start. And you're like, it's been like 3 years and they're still learning and ideating. And you're like at a certain point, it's like you're right. If you don't take action, it's all for nothing. Like learn, learn, learn. But until rubber hits the road, meets the road, so to speak, like your ideas only take you
And
so
that's
far.
that's
So
where being the
I
leader your restaurant needs is so critical. A lot of people, when I focus on leadership and I talk about that, I hone it into, I've been doing this a long time, 30 plus years, got to get close
yeah.
to 40. I'm 58 years old. I'm getting old. With that said, in the old days, I used to think when I started 2003, the number one reason why
Yeah.
restaurants fail are couponing and you were undercapitalized when you opened. And then time went on. I'm like, no, it's food costs is out of control. My labor, they're bleeding me at the time clock. Can't get my managers to do the work. Those are my challenges. And then I look back at it and I go, no, I was wrong. It's leadership. The number one reason why restaurants fail is lack of leadership. And here's the beautiful part about it, Angelo, is systems make up for our weaknesses. If you're that pencil pusher, numbers person who's impatient, doesn't tell how you want things done, and so on and so forth, you've got training and all these things making us overlap and become the
Right.
leader our restaurant needs. If I'm that social worker, the giver who just cares about the guest experience, being the center of attention, and doesn't work on budgets and KPIs, well, all of a sudden you put those in place, we become the leader our restaurant needs. So systems not just duplicate who you are, allow you to impose your will without being there, they really put you in a position where you're a leader because it makes you the leader you're supposed to do. It overcomes your weaknesses because we all have something
Yeah.
that we don't do great at.
100%. 100%. And one of the things I love about systems, because same, right? I mean, when I started Whisk, we weren't using many systems, and then as you start scaling the company and sales systems and support systems and success and like product development, etc. And one thing I learned, and it transfers over to restaurants as well, is the idea of like definition of done. One of my favorite things of good SOPs or systems is like being very clear on what is done, right? And it could be as simple as the closing checklist. And for me, it's like, make sure it looks clean and lights are off, and for someone else, it's like, no, these are the 32 things you got to do. And the looser that is, I'm sure you've seen this too, but it's the cause of so much friction in that world where in reality, it's just people have two different
Well, because
definitions.
it requires common sense, and there is no such thing. I like in a manager checklist that like if you want the lights to be set at a certain level, it can't be draw a line on the rheostat. And this is 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, because there's this thing called the sun and there's the earth, and we rotate around the sun. So
Right, right.
sunset changes all the time. So you've got to be so anal retentive to go to weatherchannel.com in the morning, find out what time sunset is. This is 2 hours for sunset. This is 1 hour. This is at sunset. And if it's cloudy, here's a whole nother set of rules. And people go to me, wait, David, you tell me I have to tell excuse my French, but I got to tell my managers how to wipe their ass. Yes, but not because they're stupid, because I want them to play a game with me, find me doing something wrong. If you're so clear, I can only be successful. Do it your way. And
Right,
that's what people got to understand.
right.
There is no such thing as common sense.
Yeah. Right. No, well said. Well said. And I'm curious from your perspective, right? You've been in the industry, like you said, 30 plus years, coming up on 40 years, so you have a wealth of experience. One thing we see on our end when trying to help restaurateurs is we have a beverage product that's really focused on the liquor, wine, beer side, and then we have a food management side, and very different personalities. When we deal with chefs, to your point, the same way, right? You're like, don't put me behind the kitchen with a knife, but you're very systems oriented. In general, there's always exceptions, but majority of chefs are very good at their chef job and working with knives, but they seem to be very resistant to change, to tech, to even spreadsheets, not even tech, just
Yep.
spreadsheets. I'm curious, why do you think that is, and how do you go about that challenge? of like trying to implement systems with that type of personality?
So I may have an answer people don't want to hear, but it starts out with an understanding that you're culinary professional that I need so badly in my business. Depending on the level, whether I need a kitchen manager or a chef is a whole different conversation. But using chef as our example, they're very artistic. They're about creating a great experience and putting a masterpiece on the table, and they're very concerned or focused on the guest in that respect. The problem is, chef means manager, not person who makes pretty food taste good. And so the higher we elevate with if I become an executive chef, multi-unit executive chef, casino chef, like, you're not touching a knife. It's the absolute opposite of what you think. You're working on training and cost controls and knife skills and checklists and inventory and ordering and par levels and all the things to manage the systems. And it's hard for them to break that, especially if they're old like me. As a Gen Xer, I call myself a survivor. Like, I survived working in the 80s and 90s in the restaurant business. Right? We treated people like crap. I'm a survivor. So a lot of these chefs are survivors, and they know one way, and they're very stuck in their way. And the reality is, we can't treat people like we were treated growing up in the business. They will not show up. They will ghost your ass. And the reality is, while we may complain about it from time to time, the new level of employee that's coming up, they were right. We shouldn't have been treated that way. They need to have a life. They need to be treated and trained properly and paid properly and given structure and proper supervision and all those things. Long way to go back to, what do I do with that chef? I teach him. I'm going to bring you on board. Like, here, an exercise that I do with people all the time. We just did it at my 2-day seminar. I get the whole room full of people to grab their hands and clasp them together, interlocking their fingers. And it's nice. It's like, ever since I was a kid, baby, sucking my thumb, boom, just like this, nice. And then I get the whole room to open their fingers, shift one finger, and close their fingers again, re-interlock them. It feels gross. It's awful. It's right. And I say, let go. And I ask the group, I say, was that difficult? No, it wasn't difficult. I said, what was it? It was uncomfortable. So change is not easy. Change is uncomfortable. And so I've got to tell my chef why I'm making the change. Hey, we're bringing on whisk because, let me tell you, we're going to give the guest a better experience because now we have consistency in our recipe costing cards. We're going to have better profitability because we're not only going to control our inventory, order on budget, order by some par levels, but you know what? We're going to be able to find ideal versus actual product usage. So instead of me saying, where's your food cost problem? We're going to highlight 4 lines and you're going to fix those things. Exactly. I'm going to make your life better. Exactly. And so I got to tell them why we're doing it. And then I've got to train them.
Yes.
And then I give them what I call my 3-strike approach to management. I train you on how to do it. You show me you got it. I walk around the corner. A month later, you're not doing it right. And as an owner, first reaction is I want to lick the palm of my hand, get a running start, and dope slap your ass and go, what are you doing? But I got to stop myself. I got to realize people learn differently. Auditory, tactile, visual. Best trainings have all 3. Some people read it, see it, they got it. Some people hear it, they got it. I'm a tactile learner. I used to do the math problems in high school in the odd problems because the answers were in the back, right? I could do them over and over and over again until I got the right answer and I understood what I was doing. So who's your learner? So I'm going to retrain you. When I see you doing it wrong, by the way, that's strike 1. That is a write-up. So now I sit there and go, okay, I'd retrain you a way that I think you're going to learn. Come around the corner a month later, you're doing it wrong again. I want to dope slap you, my fault. Upon the 3rd or 4th strike, depending on what your disciplinary program is, we've reached something called don't know versus don't care. Don't know is my fault. And I've done everything in my power to make sure you know how to do it. And you really do know how to do it. You're choosing not to do it. There's the door. So notice this approach is not going straight and go, you gotta. It's let me coddle, coach, train, do everything I can in the process because my job is to never let you fail. But if you keep fighting it, you will not be on my team.
Right. That's fair. I like that. Don't know versus don't care. That's a good takeaway for our restaurant listeners. That might be something to keep in mind. the difference in a don't know and don't care. Another thing I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen this too, is I love the approach of the why, right? If people understand the why, it's obviously super important, and most people skip that step of like, why are we implementing this system, right? Or any system, whatever it is, or why are we just changing anything? It doesn't matter. It could be changing supply or whatever. But on top of that, what I find, especially when it comes to like tech solutions for restaurateurs, I find good leaders involve the staff that's going to use it.
Yeah.
And I see this all the time with my team is sometimes the decisions are made at, C-level kind of roles, and the people using it had no say. And they're like, I hate this thing, and there's resistance and whatever. I find the best leaders do a good job of making sure they have their checklist of what they need. I need to make sure Whisk can do X, Y, okay. And then they involve their staff, whether it may be, a chef or kitchen manager, or if it's beverage side, their bar manager. And I find that step is so key because there's always a gap between ownership and what they want, which is the reporting and the output. But then the big question mark is how easy is it to get the input, which I find that's where sometimes there's resistance.
Yeah, UI is as you know better than anyone, UI is what makes or breaks your software because math is math.
Your cogs,
it's
beginning inventory,
plus purchases. Yeah, it's like bum, bum, bum.
Mm-hmm.
Math is math. So how easy is it to learn? Now, I'm going to agree and slightly disagree with you when it comes to getting them involved. I think that it's important that you bring in your key person, whether it's chef, GM, both, in that sales process, the discovery process. Does this do? But no matter what their opinion is, if I believe it's the right solution, it's what we're going to use. Again, the key is whether this is that democratic dictatorship. We get their input, but I'm going to guide the conversation and I'm going to tell them why I think it's the right solution for us, why we're going to use it, and what we're going to do to make sure they have the skills to get it done. That's the part of, I think, where the real separation is. Many people sign up for software and they think it's a frickin' magic pill. No, it's work. It's kind of like this. Getting all your invoices in, getting your recipe, your products set up, getting your recipe cards in from batch recipes for soup, sauces, side dishes, components of dishes, and then your item recipes. It's like spinning the ball in a basketball in your hand. You got to flip it, and then all this energy. But then once it's going, here's the beautiful part: tap. Like there's this energy that it takes at the beginning, like it's work. And it's not difficult. I want people to understand what I just went through, and especially with what you've got, it's not difficult. What is it? It's time consuming. So now it's uncomfortable, but it's time consuming. You've got to give yourself enough time to go, hey, we're going to start this software. We think it's going to be up and running in 1 month? No. Like you're going to get the full benefit in 2-3 months. You're going to get benefit. It's going to be 6 months plus a year to get all the way to ideal versus actual product usage. But after that first initial stuff is done in 3 months, you've got the power at your fingertips. Like that's where the magic comes in, is when invoices update your recipe cards overnight, your next order is up to date, your next inventory is up to date. It's like, you got to have that solution. And I would not, by the way, run my restaurant without food and beverage software, period. I don't care if you're a $500,000 restaurant or you're a 10 million. I wouldn't do it.
One thing I always tell people, and they'll laugh, I'll be like, look, even if you're an Excel whiz, I'm all for it, right? Excel, great. But at some point, you have to realize when you're opening the restaurant, maybe changing your menu, sure, you kind of figure it out, fine. But the hard part is maintaining it. You're buying from, I don't know, GFS or Cisco, and it's the maintaining and the time-consuming part of, I bought chicken from this guy, or it came in a different pack size, and it takes so much work that, to your point, you're absolutely right. You nailed it. It's more work in the beginning, but once it's set up, it's kind of like par levels are there, review my order, my recipes are there. Let me swap this, and it becomes maintaining versus setting up.
When you create everything with a spreadsheet, I was a spreadsheet geek. That's how I got into this business. Basically, I was a prisoner to it. And then somebody would blow up a cell. And so I got to lock down all the cells. I got to make a change. I got to unlock all the cells. I got to relock all the cells. I got to make a change. It was when a week go by that I wasn't unlocking. And then I was the only one that understood the math. Oh, by the way, if you're a restaurant owner and you've got one of your team putting this spreadsheet together, you don't even know it's wrong because you don't know how to audit the damn thing.
Right.
So now with software, you put yourself in a position that not if this employee moves on, it's when. But I've got multiple people as trained replacements keeping our system. The recipes are in my database. The prep systems are in my database. The par levels are in my database. Like, it's my system, my process, my way that's trainable over and over and over again. Again, spreadsheets are nice, but you've created a hell for yourself.
Yeah. No, you nailed it. And it's funny you say it's one of the things I see all the time is like the manager knows how to order every week because he's there and he's used to it. But it's like the minute he's on vacation or she's on vacation or quits or fired, or whatever, it's like you got to figure out your par level. So it's like, put the system, have your par levels, and if that person's away, it's like the business keeps running, and it's not dependent on one person.
And then all you got to do is teach somebody how to count, and it sounds silly, but you have to teach them how to count. Like, it's not a go count.
Yeah, 100%. Wow, I love that. And I'm curious. So obviously, you've been helping restaurants for years, for decades now. What's a common misconception that maybe restaurateurs have when they first come to you for help?
The biggest thing is that they can turn their business around overnight. It is the systems that I teach are easy. Like a key item tracker to prevent theft, count 5 to 15 items every shift. It's a clipboard system. Right. Waste sheet, waste tracker. It's a clipboard system. I get you to take inventory in under an hour. If you're set up properly, shelf the sheet, like, that's not a problem. But the reality is it's the people part. That's the hard part. So yes, while we could implement these things, if you don't make them a part of your culture, you cannot implement things too quickly. Otherwise, they come and they go. For instance, let's take a key item tracker and a waste tracker. These are clipboard systems in the restaurant, one to prevent theft, the other to stop dumbass mistakes and proactively change. Instead of throwing away tomatoes, change your order. Instead of burning steaks, retrain somebody. Like, right away, make a change.
Yes.
They are the two easiest systems in the world to put in place. They are the two hardest systems in the world to get used on a daily basis because it requires a manager to look at them every single day. And the day you don't look at them, the day they go away. So it's this consistency in using the systems and holding people accountable to them. That's where change happens. And here's the reality. For the first 15, 16 years of my coaching, I was the systems guy. Oh, I'm the restaurant expert. I'm the systems guy. While I'm still the systems guy, the reality is the systems don't change your world. You changing your company culture with systems, that's what we're talking about. You are changing your culture, how you do things, why you do things. People are all on board. And that goes back to leadership again, because you got to be willing to allow people to make a decision to come along with the change or be gone and be promoted to customer. I no longer can allow 2-3 key employees hold my business back, period.
Well said. It's funny. As you were saying that, a thought that came to mind was even when we help clients, with inventory and whatever and implementing what we learned, and we learned the hard way, and there's a bit of a parallel, is if in our case, a restaurant is not doing inventory, it's very hard because they're going from, and to your point, it's the people thing, but it's like they're going from nothing to something. And I always joke around, even if Whisk is the most magical AI, this, that, what, it's like if you went from 0 minutes a week and now you're doing 30 minutes a week, I created work for you, you're going to resent Whisk. And that's what we've seen. And so to your point, it's like that idea of like a big part of this relies on the people. If someone just doesn't want to do inventory and they're used to a third party coming in and counting, it doesn't matter whether you choose Whisk or another software. It's like it's an uphill battle because now they're doing something and you're trying to change behavior.
And that's how to be a leader, hold people accountable. This is what we are going to do. I'm going to support you, get you there. I can tell you, I'm like you because I'm a restaurant operations person. I cover labor systems, cost goods sold systems, leadership systems, training, like you name it in the restaurant business other than marketing.
Yes.
The reality is I always tell people, and I just did a 2-day seminar in Vegas. I suck. I create work. Right. If you guys think this is a freaking magic pill, you're smoking dope. It's easy, but it takes time because it's the people part.
Yes.
And you create work. But once you do the work at the beginning, it is so easy to maintain. It becomes how you do things. It gets to a point where I'm sure you get to, if somebody had an internet outage and they call you, your software's down and you're not, and it's their internet. They start freaking out because they got to place an order. They gotta do their inventory. They've got to do prep or whatever it is. And this is how we do our business. Like it's how they breathe. Like that's what it becomes a part of your system, your operating procedures.
Yeah.
And they get to a point where they freak out when they don't have it anymore. And they were the same people who fought it in the beginning.
Yes. That's the best feeling though. Low key, best feeling when I look back, especially early days of Whisk, because it was like since 2014. But funny enough, in a weird way, because obviously you don't want clients to have bad experiences. But when someone would call and say, "Hey, I'm trying to place my order, but it seems like that page is not loading," and we'd be like, it was bittersweet to your point, because bad, because like we don't want clients to have that, but like, oh shit, people are relying on this. Finally, this is good. So it's well said on that end. I'm curious, when you look at this, right? There's many different pillars. It sounds like, but I'd love to hear from you, that maybe the people one is a bit of the harder one. But from your experience, cogs and labor and this, it sounds like that leadership side maybe is a bit tougher to implement. But I'd love to hear from you, from your experience and from dealing with clients. What do you find is the most kind of challenging part? I guess generally, I know it depends restaurant to restaurant. But...
So I'll give you the four biggest complaints. If I'm talking to a restaurant owner for the first time and tell me your pain points, what's going on? It's my food cost is out of control. My employees are bleeding at the time clock. My managers aren't doing what I asked them to do, and my employees are idiots. I'm like, okay, well, how did that happen? Right? You allowed it to happen. You didn't give them a system, a process way. You weren't clear with your KPIs. That is allowing people to invent their jobs. And in a vacuum, they will invent their jobs. I was a manager over at this other restaurant. Doesn't mean they did it right, but they're going to bring their skills over and do what they do. Right? So fundamentally, it goes back to people. Now, if I can change my company culture, and I call it becoming an employer of choice, that's okay. You don't have to be the highest paid, but you got to be competitive in pay rates. You've got to have structured training. You have to have management and rules. Believe it or not, people say employees hate rules. I say bullshit. They love rules. What they hate is the inconsistency in management enforcing those rules. So we've got to be consistent with that. We've got to provide people a path forward. Some people don't want to be. Like, God bless America, the restaurant that has that dishwasher has been with you for 15, 20 years. That is a godsend. May never have a desire to manage, cook, do anything. So do understand, some people, where they want to be, if that's where you want to be, God bless. But there is a group of people go, what's my next step? If I learn, where do I go? Right. So they've got to see a path. Right. There's got to be continued development, but more importantly, and this is with millennials and younger, they have to feel like they're part of something bigger than them. So this is telling your why. Why did you open your business? Yes. It's sharing your core values so that everybody makes decisions based off those two things, moving the company forward, even if they make decisions independently. And it comes down to people, which is back to leadership. The other things, not to poo-poo labor, scheduling, and cost controls, or bar or food controls, they are tasks. Yep. They are tasks that I can teach somebody how to do. They're incredibly important, but I need to have the people. So my answer sticks. It's the people part.
People. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, we've seen it. We've have clients who are saving insane amounts of money every year using Whisk, and then sometimes we'll have that client who they might have a staff member who complains, and we try to explain to them, listen, it's not a system thing. I don't think if you told me the app is down, I get it, but if you just think you're going to switch software and magically your staff member who hates doing inventory is going to love it, there's kind of that gap.
Well, and here's the tough part about having a software company is managers want to find the one bug, the one hiccup you had because we did an update. And so now this doesn't perform right. As soon as the first call comes in, we're like, developers, fix it. We put a patch out right away. But now that they have this window to go, oh, well, the software's broken. I would have tried. Oh, software is broken. Right. And it's that little excuse that opens the door to go, I don't want to do this.
Yes.
Because a part of it is also, what does the software do? It gives us numbers. It simplifies systems. It makes life easy. Wait a second. I can't hide anymore. It holds me accountable. And that's where a lot of the people want to derail the process. True. I call them saboteurs in our business. They look like your best employee. Often they're, yes, I'm so excited. We're putting Whisk in, but I've been dying for recipe cards and an inventory system. This is so great. And then they don't do anything. They don't do anything. You're like, hey, did you get that set up? Oh, well, Locust came and took my truck and dropped it on the ground. So I was late to work. So I didn't have time today. Locust grabbed my laptop, threw it in the air, dropped it down. I don't care what it is. Any excuse, just call them locusts. And it's all these excuses. And you're like, what? You're giving me all the right things. Yes, yes, yes. I'm excited. But your actions show me you aren't going to do the work. And that's where the frustration happens. So owners have to be willing to let people make the choice. If they want to promote themselves to customers, man, you got to do it.
Yeah. You nailed it there. Oh my God. So what was the word again? A saboteur?
Saboteur.
What do you call it?
That's what I teach it. I mean, I've got 4 different kinds of saboteurs to look for.
Yeah.
But the yes man is the big
one. Let's talk. Yeah, no, it's funny. Well, now that we spoke, let's go into it because we've, dealing with so many restaurants at Whisk, it's something we see, thankfully, not the majority of the time, but every once in a while, it's like, man, we get that saboteur. And you nailed it. The scary part. I'm curious to know the other 3, but I've definitely seen the yes man of absolutely. And then they don't want to put the recipes in and the variance looks off.
But those are the yes people. They give you positives. They're like your best employee. They show I'm the best employee. Yeah. Well, you got the other people that are really easy. You've got the thieves, which are literally stealing time from you by delaying the process, or have to fight the change because they really are stealing from you. I put this in place. You're going to see I'm taking brisket out the back door. Like this, I need to fight this as long as possible. You've got the complainers. Oh, we don't have time for that. We've tried that in the past. Oh, they don't understand. Our restaurant's different. What do you serve with a limp? So they present themselves differently. But the fact of the matter is they all have one common goal, and it's to stop the process. Yeah. They are working to stop the process.
I'm happy because hearing this from someone with your experience, I've seen it. I've been doing it maybe 10 years now, maybe a bit over, but you doing it for close to 40, it's nice to hear because sometimes you're like, am I crazy? And then it's nice to hear like, okay, these things do exist,
And I'm gonna tell you right now, I know who your customer is. I work with them. And I used to have software. And the fact of the matter is, there's probably 10% of your users that I'm going to call power users. They are rock and rolling. They are ideal to actual product usage.
Every quarter.
When they give you a system request, you're like, yes, let's put it on the board. This is one of my best people are going to get it done.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But there's a whole slew that only use like one thing, 2 things sporadically. And they buy insurance. Yeah. And it's scary because when you put the systems in place, the power is unbelievable. Like I have never used your interface, but I can tell you, same stuff. And the fact of the matter is, I'd put it in place blind and realize that I could save 3 to 7 points to my bottom line like that if I used the damn systems.
Yes.
Because most restaurants operate 7 to 9 points above their ideal cost. No waste, no theft, no spoilage, following recipes perfectly based on what the customers actually order. Man, you start to pay attention to your product. It is amazing how all of a sudden people don't overorder. They don't overuse. Yeah. When they start to see the misguided use of Lurch and his big hand, they start using portion controls. And like all of a sudden you operate like a business. And the beautiful part is a lot of what people think when they get your software is, I'm going to make money. I'm going to save money. I'm going to save money. Do you know that if you put the recipe cards in and you put in all these other controls, your dishes are going out more consistent, which you're going to build business because customers come back and they know we can expect to see the same dish every single time. Not it's spicy one day, it's not the other. Not it's a big portion one day, it's a small portion. It's the same. And it's that consistency that all of a sudden builds your business. Because that's where the most of your regulars come in. They don't even look at the menu anymore. They just order the thing they love.
That makes sense. And it's funny because I feel like restaurants are more aware of like how much, change in percentage points, whether it's food costs or beverage costs or just cost of goods in general, can affect the business. For us specifically, we saw people being more aware of it post-COVID because I guess everyone was shut down and looking at their inventory, so people became a lot more aware. But it's like sometimes I have to remind people, I'm like, a lot of our customers do well over $1 million a year, but I even just take that as for simple math. I'm like, look, you're doing $1 million a year, a 5% improvement on your COGS is $50,000. It's $50,000, right? Like it's it's a bit, and that's bottom line, meaning it's not $50,000 in revenue. It's even, in that sense,
So
right?
the
Like
biggest thing that needs to happen, this is what I teach my members. It is critical to what we do. In fact, I say it's the most important thing we'll ever do together is we create a budget for you based on your trailing 12 months. If you operate the same way, then we say, what systems are we going to put in place? How quickly to achieve new numbers? Now it's a proactive plan.
right.
Without that plan, we don't know where our food costs should be. We don't know where our labor costs should be by position, because all of a sudden there's this term called prime cost. To an old timer like me, it was called controllable expenses, in control of management, how we hire, fire, train, utilize our people, purchase product, utilize a product. Prime cost.
Yes.
Well, if you're at $850,000 a year or more business, your target used to be 65%. For my members, since I've been doing this, it's 55. And the reason being is we have tech stacks now. We've got costs that are going through the roof, from food costs rising, pork costs rising, labor minimum wages through the roof. Our occupant costs are going through the roof. So we've got to become more efficient. So 55%, if you're under, it'd be 60, under 850. Well, all of a sudden, when we manage that, if I'm in California and I've got now fast food restaurants in Los Angeles are $22 an hour, going to 25, I think, right? Well, guess what? My food costs are going to have to be 20 or sub 20s. But I could be in Atlanta, Georgia, where we still have a tip credit. I got servers at $2.13 an hour. I could run the old 34% food cost and still make money. So you've got to know, based on your location, your price point, your style of service, your quality of product, your core values, where your prime cost should be, because you could have higher labor costs, lower cost of goods sold, vice versa. So we've got to start with a budget so we have the right KPIs. What key performance indicators? What is my target food cost, bottled beer, draft beer, wine, liquor, NA bev, based on its sales mix, and then my labor by position. Now we're running a business. We're not just shooting from the hip and our gut. So now when I use your software, I not only have an ideal and an actual from the software, but I have a budgeted target to shoot for. And this is not the 34% you grabbed from a frickin' magazine article or saw somebody quote the NRA show. Like, what is your food cost supposed to be? And it's a much bigger story.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. And obviously over the years, I can't even imagine how many clients you help, but I'd always like to maybe highlight, is there a success story? I'm sure there's a lot, but is there one that comes to mind, or a favorite one that comes to mind that was able to apply your strategies and you can kind of share?
Well, that's a tough one, because I've literally worked with thousands of restaurant owners and their managers.
Right. It's hard to pick one.
So I could tell you more recently.
Sure.
I have a member who had become one of my member mentors now in my program, a member that helps other members, Daisha Wakefield.
Okay.
She was a school teacher. Husband's a CPA. They had a dream to open up a tasting room for brewing beer and distributing, and they put a wood-fired pizza to have pizza, an oven. So that's it. Well, they've grown into a several $1 million a year business, seasonal. They are crushing it. But she went from being a school teacher wrapped into the business where their food cost was out of control, their labor cost in off season, because it kept everyone employed, robbed them all their profitability, and now loves her numbers, has a full management team in place, opened a second restaurant, and does not require to be in either one of them at any point in time, and are running I believe in season about a 50% prime cost, out of season about a 55 to 58, depending where it is, but they're going to end their year on budget. And this is somebody who said, I don't know numbers. That's my husband. Just was a great trainer, a great manager of people, and not a restaurant person. Yes, she grew up in the business on and off, but the fact of the matter is stellar. And it just shows how important budgets and systems are, because this woman rocks and rolls. Like she was at my seminar just last week, brought a couple of her managers. We call it drinking the Kool-Aid, to get them to buy in. And I kept giving her kudos, and you could tell she was embarrassed. She didn't want the kudos, but she's a rock star. And that's the beautiful part about systems. Whether it's your system, whether it's a training system or counting out a bar drawer, it's a system. You master these things, man, running a restaurant is much easier to lead, much easier to get your numbers, much easier to be profitable.
Well said. Well said. One definitely we're gonna plug. I want people to be able to find you that don't know you already, but to our audience to be able to find all that. So we'll do all those plugs. But one last one for you to all our restaurant operators listening. What's maybe and this might be a little generic, but what's your go-to advice for restaurant operators listening in who generally just feel completely overwhelmed? Where can they start?
To start is on themselves. There is, something called mindset. There's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And I need you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We'll talk about that. But a growth mindset person is different from a fixed mindset. Fixed mindset says the government's screwing me. My vendors are screwing me. My employees are idiots. All my customers are Karens. Like it's never your fault. All these things happening to you are somebody else's fault, from rising food costs, labor, and so on. The growth mindset person says, man, all these challenges are coming, but I can outwork it. I can outlearn it. I can outspend it. I will find a way to get over this as a speed bump, not a wall that stops me dead in the tracks. So you've got to find yourself, your inner self, and go, I've got to find the positive outlook of what I do. What are the positive things? What are my wins? Don't focus on the negative. What did we do well? Hey, we grew a business from nothing, to $800,000. Like that's a win. So starting with your mindset, because I can't work with you or a fixed mindset, nor will you look for me, but growth mindset.
Right.
The other is this. As an entrepreneur, and I think, Angela, you can probably agree with me on this. There are days as an entrepreneur, especially as a restaurant operator, that the shit hits the fan. That you are just so down, like somebody kicked you in the gut and goes, this is horrible. You feel bad about yourself. In the restaurant business, what you do all the debauchery. You could drink yourself to sleep, eat yourself to sleep, do whatever badness that you do, feel sorry, cry, do whatever. That's okay. We're humans. What you do the next day defines you. If you let that feeling go to 2 days, which goes to 3 days, which goes to a week, to a month, to a year, you're never leading your business out of the hole. You're always going to be a prisoner to it. You're always going to have a gray cloud over your head. So you have to say, I can and I will make the changes necessary in my business to be the leader I need to be.
No, well said. And yeah, I'm sure you've lived it. I've lived it. There's roller coaster of a ride owning a business. The highs are highs, the lows are extra low. But you're right. Like sometimes it's not even about fighting the feeling, but just own it for one day. But then get back on the horse and I'll take it. Today was horrible because X, Y. But then you're right. It's how fast you get back on the horse, because it's a slippery slope. And I do find that you're absolutely right. Like if you dwell on something too long, it gets progressively harder to get back.
Doesn't mean it doesn't suck. Doesn't mean it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
It means you have to believe that there is a solution. Go find it.
Yes. Well said. This is awesome, man. I could talk to you for hours, but we're going to post this obviously on YouTube, on our podcast channels. We even turned this into a weekly newsletter we give out where we kind of take away some key takeaways from each episode. So there'll be some good ones here from the 4 types of, what was the word you used?
Saboteurs.
The saboteurs, and there'll be a bunch of good stuff. So that'll be great. But for people who want to find you, people who are looking for help, I'd love for you to just plug away. We'll put the links, but just, people listening, if you want to share, website,
sure,
YouTube channels, LinkedIn, whatever.
There's an awful lot of places you can find free information from me. You can buy my book, Restaurant Prosperity Formula, What Successful Restaurateurs Do, found in all the popular booksellers, but Amazon has it. You can come visit my YouTube channel, David Scott Peters. You can listen to my podcast, Restaurant Prosperity Formula. You can go to my website, davidscottpeters.com. There's a blog there. There's so many different ways to get free information from me that you can circle for years. But if ever you want to learn, make sure you click on the link to learn more about what we do. We're not right for everybody. I just like to think we are.
I love that. Well, once again, you're listening to David Scott Peters, restaurant expert and coach. Thanks for joining us, David. It was a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate you being on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
If you want to learn more about Whisk, head to whisk.ai and book a demo.